Hey guys, how's it going? So with 7.3.5 most likely being the last patch of the expansion, I'm going to be making a class guide, or a Ret Paladin guide. Just kind of a Ret Paladin 101 guide. Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to talk to you guys about, I guess, how I play Ret Paladin. How you could improve what you're going to want to do if you want to burst. I'm basically just gonna try to share my shitty knowledge with you guys, and if you guys want to find a better Ret Paladin guide, I would suggest Savix. He's a meme. I've always said he's a memer. Everyone knows who Savix is at this point. I'd assume so. And yeah, go look at him if you wanted a more in-depth and like a verified good Ret Paladin guide. Just type in Savix, it's not that too hard to find him. But anyway, here's the lowdown on artifacts. I don't think they really matter anymore. Don't know anything about the relics. Just get concordance and put as many points into that as possible. Then you're good. Next, what you're gonna want to do, I guess we'll talk about abilities here. So, one of your main abilities, or the main ability that I guess your rotation primarily revolves around is Judgement. Your Judgement increases the damage of your holy spenders by 38%. So if you put Judgement on a target, should have probably stayed near a target dummy. That would have been a decent idea. So if you throw Judgement on a target and you have holy power, you're gonna use this while Judgment's on him, and it's gonna do 38% more damage. And I'll use it without Judgement on him. And it did about 30% less damage than it would have with Judgement. So, basically, what you're going to want to do as a Ret Paladin is have as much holy power as possible. You're going to want to dump it in a time window of which you have Judgement on the target. That's kind of the base idea of Ret Paladin. You very rarely, unless you're like just completely capped out on holy power and don't have any other button to use, you very rarely want to use holy power spenders on a target that doesn't have Judgement on them. That's kind of the gif of Ret TBH. You just kind of just get holy power spenders and spend them on people. Then obviously to generate holy power you have Divine Hammer, which is, if you're spec'd into it, it's Divine Hammer. Otherwise, it's called Blade of Justice, generates 2 holy power on a 9-second cooldown. Zeal, or Crusader Strike, if you're not spec'd into Zeal, generates 1 holy power, max 2 charges, has a 3-second cooldown. Those are your 2 holy power generators. Those allow you to use Templar's Verdict and Divine Storm. Divine Storm, I would suggest using it on 2 or more targets. Does just a lot of damage. And it's barely does less damage than Templar's Verdict. So if there's 2 targets even close to you, just use Divine Storm. That's most of the time I find myself using Divine Storm over Templar's Verdict on 2 or more targets. I'd only use Templar's Verdict on 1 target. So, next thing, Avenging Wrath, just use it. So it's like a 30% damage increase. Blessing of Freedom, everyone knows what this is. It frees you from roots, any movement impairing effects. We have a 30-second slow. Savix just made a video on this, and I lulled because he basically called out Blizzard, calling them stupid pieces of ape material for giving the least mobile class a slow. That's a 30-second cooldown, while other classes have no cooldown on their slow. So thanks for pointing that out, Savix. You the real MVP. So next we have Blessing of Protection, or as many people call it, BOP. It's basically a poor man's Divine Shield, except it doesn't block. It blocks physical attacks, doesn't block range attacks. So if you use this on a spellcaster, you fucked up. You're probably not paying attention to the tooltips. Divine Steed is our gap closer, our 1 gap closer outside of Hand of Hindrance. Gives you a mount. I get a Kodo because I'm a cow. If you're a Blood Elf, you get a horse. If you're an Alliance, you get a horse. And if you're a Draenei, you get a elephant. Flash of Light, it's your heal. Everyone knows what this is. Just heals you. Blessings, you just apply these. You don't really have to care about them that much. The real reason you apply them is to get the 4% strength buff. Hand of Justice, 6-second stun is reduced by a talent. Hand of Hindrance, already talked about that. Judgement, already talked about that. Lay on Hands basically heals you to full health. just use it there. If I had no health there, I would have had full health. It's on a 10-minute cooldown. Shield of Vengeance. This is interesting. It gives you a shield, and then once the shield's over, it splits the damage among all the targets around you. So if you have one target around you, you use this, it's going to do all that damage to them. I like it. It's just kind of like an extra ability that you can use. It's just an absorb, so I mean, use it whenever you're going to take damage or whenever you kind of want to burst. Usually, sometimes if you think you're going to get bursted before you go into a fight, you're going to want to use this, then use Avenging Wrath, use your burst, and then this will just pop by the time, it'll usually pop within like the first 2 seconds of being on someone. It doesn't really absorb all that much damage. The next thing is Wake of Ashes. Basically does a ton of damage and gives you 5 holy power. So it does damage in an arc, it does instant damage, and then it does damage over time, so now you know what that is. And then the other thing you want to pay attention to is Retribution. Whenever someone dies around you, you get a 20% damage increase and 30% reduced damage taken, so just keep that in mind. If you get this buff, you're going to do extra damage. This 20% increase, along with your Avenging Wrath, which is a 35% increase, is a 55% increase with Berserking. If you get all 3 of those, that's a 85% increase to damage. Rat Paladins is one of the very few classes that actually has a lot of percent damage increases. So on to talents. I'm not going to go over the useless talents. There's obviously some talents that I just never use, and honestly, most of the Rat Paladin talents, most of the time, you don't really go into the other ones, because the other ones are pretty garbage. So, I don't think I've ever seen anyone take either Execution Sentence or Consecration. You're most likely just going to want to take Final Verdict, most of the time in any situation. This is where, this is like the one row where you can kind of change it up a bit. Fires of Justice, it gives your Crusader Strike a reduced cooldown. Also makes it so whenever you Crusader Strike, you're going to have a chance to reduce the cost of your Templar's Verdict by 1 holy power. So instead of 3 holy power, you're spending 2. If you want to kind of play that playstyle, you think you're going holy power starved a lot, I would suggest it. If you're kind of playing an RPG or anything where you have a lot of melee near you, Zeal's probably the one you're going to want to go. It does higher physical damage, has max 2 charges, and you have a chance. Let's see, I haven't even, it just does extra damage to people around you outside of your primary target that you're hitting with it. So grant Zeal, causing Zeal attacks to chain to an additional nearby target per stack, maximum 3 stacks. Each jump deals 40% less damage. So pretty much once you get 3 stacks, the last target that's getting hit by is pretty much getting tickled by you. Greater Judgment. Your Judgment ability hits 2 additional nearby enemies and always deals critical strike against targets above 50% health. I can switch this up with Zeal or Greater Judgment. Greater Judgment does work very well with Lawbringer, and I really like Lawbringer, and I'll talk about that later. So, all of these talents are, I'd say, are interchangeable. It just depends on the situation that you're in. Fist of Justice. I always take this. Each holy power spent reduces the remaining cooldown on Hammer of Justice. I'll show you guys it here. So basically, if I hodge someone, I'll just hodge this target dummy. And then I'll get some holy power. So it's at a 50-second cooldown right now. Now it's at a 48-second cooldown. So every holy power you spend, you're going to get a 2.5 reduced second. 2.5 second reduced on your Hammer of Justice, which is your 6-second stun. So obviously, if you don't think that's the best talent choice, then I don't know what's going on in your head. So for level 60, again, this is one of the row that's somewhat interchangeable. Virtue's Blade, Blade of Justice, critical strikes now deal 3 times normal damage. If you really, really want to go for high Blade of Justices, then go for it. I personally use Blade of Wrath. Your auto attacks have a chance to reset the cooldown of Blade of Justice, and this happens a lot, and this obviously synergizes very well with one of your artifact talents, which is right here. Your holy power spending abilities increase the damage of your next Blade of Justice by 32%. So ideally what you'd want to do is you'd want to go up to target and then use your Templar's Verdict, Blade of Justice, Templar's Verdict, try to get a reset, Blade of Justice. You basically just want to slam Blade of Justice anytime after you use a holy power spending ability. Divine Hammer. Again, this is an AoE kind of build. I personally like using this when there's Arathi Basin, Battle for Gilneas. Not usually Warsong Gulch or Twin Peaks. Surrounded the Ancients, it's also pretty good against the gates. Anywhere where there's just a bunch of melee or casters or anyone just kind of clumped up in a group, it hits fairly far around you, surprisingly. 8 yards. It does have a long cooldown, but it just does a lot of damage, so... Personally, I flip and flop between Blade of Wrath and Divine Hammer. For the level 75 talents, Justicar's Vengeance, Eye for an Eye. I've never used Word of Glory, so I wouldn't... I haven't touched it, so I have no input on it. Eye for an Eye, I would use it against melee. Reduces physical damage you take by 35%, so just a 35% damage reduction, and instantly counterattacks any enemy that strikes you in melee combat for a certain amount of physical damage. Obviously, if you're going against another Ret Pally, Assassination Rogue, an Arms Warrior, Fury Warrior, Frost DK, anything that's a melee, Feral Druid especially, this destroys Feral Druids and especially Assassination Rogues, I'd take Eye for an Eye. If you kind of want a self-heals build, Justicar's Vengeance. This is a holy power spender. It does about the same damage as Templar's Verdict, except it heals you. If you stun someone and then use it, it heals you for more and does additional damage. So, think about that. I personally, most of the time, run Eye for an Eye just because it gives you that one defensive, because Paladins don't really have that many defensives, so I really just like having this in store to reduce the physical damage I take. Now on to the level 90 talents. Just use Divine Intervention. There's really no questions asked about this talent. I've seen everyone ever take it. I don't see anyone take this. I don't see anyone take this. I've never taken it. I've taken Divine Intervention the whole expansion, so that's my input. Again, the 100 talent. Holy Wrath's pretty pointless. I've never used it. I've never taken it. I haven't taken it the whole expansion, and I've done fine without it. Divine Purpose, I've used it pretty much the whole expansion. Your Holy Power spending abilities have a 20% chance to make your next Holy Power spending ability free, so whenever you use Templar's Verdict, you're going to have a chance to get a refreshed Templar's Verdict. So, and then, obviously, if you're using Justicar's Vengeance, if you use Divine Purpose, or if you use Justicar's Vengeance while you have Divine Purpose, it's pretty much just a free, hard-hitting self-heal. They synergize very well. I'll flip between Eye for an Eye and Justicar's Vengeance, depending on the playstyle that I want to play. And then Crusade is very odd. It takes a while to build up the damage to it, but it gives you haste as well. And you have a chance to get 45% increased damage if you get all the stacks up. And 45% increased haste, which is slightly more than a Bloodlust, I believe. So, but the thing is, you have to build the damage up. And you get 3% per holy power you spend, so after 5 holy power spenders, you get that final kind of 15 stacks Crusade. But if someone uses Crusade, you can obviously just kite them and run away and wait for the damage to fall off. Personally, I like Avenging Wrath just because it gives you 35% increased damage instantly. It's like I don't like having to build up my damage, so. On to the Honor talents. Gladiator's Medallion, always use it. Reinforced Armor, I always use it. You can change it for Sparring if you really want to. Jurisdiction, if you're trying to get a lot of Hammer of Justice off, which is your stun, Unbound Freedom, if you think you're getting slowed a lot, even though people can usually either purge freedom or spell steal it from you, so I think it's kind of useless. What I use most of the time is Law and Order. When your Hand of Hindrance is dispelled or otherwise removed early, the cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds, and then your Blade of Justice applies Hand of Hindrance, which is a 75% slow. So, that's the one I take most of the time. Outside of that, you can play with these. If you want like a passive playstyle, Holy Ritual is probably your way to go. So whenever you blessing yourself, Blessing of Freedom, Blessing of Protection, any type of those blessings, you'll just get a little bit of a heal. Sometimes I use Luminescence just because it heals allies. You can use Cleansing Light against, I guess, a Unholy Death Knight, Assassination Rogue. Doesn't really make a huge difference. And now this is where it kind of gets a little more complex. I've never used Seraphim's Blessing. Blessing of Sanctuary. Savix has a very good guide on this. I think he's, well, plenty more knowledgeable than me about Blessing of Sanctuary. I personally haven't used it. I feel like it's kind of hard to, I guess, implement into your playstyle, so that's why I don't touch it. Personally, I like Vengeance Aura. Basically just gives you 4% increased crit chance and 4% increased holy damage and stacks up to 4 times, so that's a 16% increase to your holy damage and your crit chance. That's why I take it. It seems pretty incentive to me. Or it is a big incentive to me. And here's the wombo right here. Lawbringer. Judgement now applies Lawbringer to initial targets hit for 45 seconds. Casting Judgement causes all enemies within your Lawbringer effects to suffer 5% of their total health in damage. This mixed with Greater Judgment, it does magical things. I've done it, I've used it before, and it's pretty ridiculous. It does a lot of damage. So I'm gonna probably play with that playstyle here soon. I think it's really fun. And then Divine Punisher, I haven't used this. If you think you're going Holy Power starved a lot, you can use it. Casting 2 consecutive judgments on the same enemy will generate 3 Holy Power. So it's basically just a Holy Power generator. You're gonna get more Holy Power in general. Hammer of Reckoning. This is a very interesting one. It gives you your Avenging Wrath for 6 seconds. So if you use this, you're going to be able to get Avenging Wrath every 1 minute, even though it's on a 2-minute cooldown already. So you're going to have, I guess, an extra 6 seconds on your Avenging Wrath, which is, I guess, about a 30-second Avenging Wrath. So, I mean, if you really want to use it, go for it. Personally, I just always use Lawbringer. So that's kind of my run-through of the abilities and the talents of Ret Paladin. It's not a very complex class, so you kind of just hit people with damage. So I'll show you guys here. I wish I could mute these guys because they are fucking loud, but here, I'll play with it. Sound. Whatever. Okay. Here we go. So I'm gonna show you guys kind of a basic build, or like rotation, I guess. So let's say I'm running in on someone, just want to burst them. I like saving Shield of Vengeance until I know I'm going to take damage enough damage to pop it. You start with Wings, you Wake of Ashes, you Judgment, you use your Holy Power Spenders, after you use your Holy Power Spender, you can use your Divine Hammer, or whatever your Blade of Justice is turned into. Basically just want to keep up your Holy Power, or you want to keep up your Judgment debuff on people. You're going to want, obviously since I'm playing with Divine Hammer, I'll play with not Divine Hammer in a second. I'll show you guys how much, just like how many times Blade of Wrath comes off cooldown. So, obviously, Blade of Wrath's off cooldown, you get 2 Holy Power. You try to keep your Crusader Strike at 1 stack, just so you constantly have something to press. Again, Blade of Justice does extra damage, the buff's right there. Next time I use Blade of Justice, it's going to do increased damage. When you don't have Judgment on your target, you're not going to want to use Templar's Verdict. Do that, Wake of Ashes for extra Holy Power. Holy Power Spender, use your Blade of Justice because it has its damage increased. Use Crusader Strike because you have nothing else to press. Blade of Justice off cooldown, use it immediately because it's buffed by damage. Again, buffed by damage, so you're going to use it again. And then you're going to wait for your Judgment to come on cooldown. Use it. Use your Holy Power Spender. You're going to use your Blade of Justice whenever it's back on cooldown because it has increased damage. So it's just kind of that, flow of, I guess, using your abilities when Judgment's on someone, using your Blade of Justice. Whenever you get Divine Purpose procs like this, just dump them into the target as long as you have Judgment on the person. That's about it, honestly. It's not that hard. I like Ret. It's pretty simple once you get used to it. Those guys were loud as shit next to me, but to play Ret Pally, it's pretty fun. Everyone always tells me it's a very face roll spec, and I would agree with them. So, hopefully you guys liked the video. I'm going to be releasing kind of just these basic, very basic, borderline retarded class guides for every spec that I play, which is all of them. So, expect those to come out, I'd say, every day for a while. Yeah, if you guys like the guide, share it with your friends. I'm not a competitive raider or anything like that, fair warning. I just PvP a lot. Yeah, if you guys like it, give it a thumbs up. It helps me out a lot. If you guys have any questions, comments, tips, concerns, anything like that, leave in the comment section below. Social media is in the description of the video, along with my Twitter. Follow me on that. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, guys, I'll see you guys later.